I think the North Star just really helps you get rid of the fluff and not get distracted by all the different things kind of going on in the motion in the situation, and it helps bring other people into your thinking.
Today we are welcoming Ms. Francie Jain. She is the founder and CEO of Terawatt. This is a company that brings together coaches and consultants and employers because she believes that with support, every employee can thrive. Welcome, Ms. Jain.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dr. Douglas. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I had a very wonderful time during our first encounter, and you left me with many interesting thoughts. So I'm sure our audience will enjoy and learn from the things that you will share with us today.
Oh,
So tell me
lovely.
a little bit about your journey. How did you get
Yeah.
started?
Yeah. So I never know where to start because I had such a crazy sort of background. But one thing I'll say is I'm one of the few people in the world who is not afraid of career change.
Mm.
And so I've switched careers like 3 or 4 times. And my last real career was in finance after business school. So went to business school to learn, economics and accounting and finance, all the things. And I worked raising capital for hedge funds for like over 10 years. And that was great. And it was a good use of like my brain because I really like connecting with people and talking about data. So that was great. But, so there were interpersonal, I'd say, issues. And I felt like it was just kind of hard to be the way I wanted to be. Until really until Terawatt started, I didn't really think that much about psychology or professional development, but I started to get interested in it because there had been a statistic talking about how many manufacturing jobs were lost.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really random. It was just like it was almost an off the cuff remark during the 2016 presidential debate with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And one of them had said, "Oh, well, I've done more for the manufacturing workers who've lost their jobs. Since 2000, 15 million manufacturing workers have lost their jobs." And I was like stopped in my tracks because I thought, that's a lot of people. Is that right? And so I spent a lot of time looking into these numbers. And yes, over that 16-year time period, it was somewhere between 5 million, 15 million manufacturing jobs have been lost. But actually, since then, I realized that you can almost look at any time series since 1944, and there will be manufacturing jobs lost because the peak was right after the war ended. And since then, manufacturing in America has been coming down every year. So that was interesting. But it led to my question of, I know that when I switch careers, it freaks out my family, freaks out my friends. They get really worried. What am I going to be doing? How's that going to work? And I think it's fine. I'll just talk to a bunch of people and I'll find a path and I'll make it work. And so my question was, when I realized that was a true statistic, is who's helping those people? And I bet that that's actually really hard for them because it's hard for people to have to figure out how to switch careers. And most people are not optimistic about something like that. It scares them. And I thought, that's really sad. It's like wrong. And so I just was thinking about it. And it was one of these things where I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I just kept thinking that's wrong. That really should exist. And I really had zero background in any of this, but I just thought it'd be fun to build something that would help people, with access to experts in professional development and access to being a better version of themselves, however way that was helpful to them.
So what did you come up with?
Oh, yeah. So we are a B2B marketplace. Meaning that we sell to employers. And so what I've created is a marketplace of experts. And primarily it's executive coaches, but we have a little bit of everything. We're like close to 100 coaches now, and they're primarily in the States, but some in Europe and South America, Canada. And really the idea is, it's almost like based on the idea, like the maths or division, right? So that if you were to hire an expert executive coach and meet with them one-on-one, they have a rate. But what happens if you, instead of having one-on-one time with that coach, what if you have one coach and 10 employees or colleagues, or one coach and 20 colleagues? Because the idea is on a per person basis, it's a lot more affordable. And so that's what we're trying to do, is bring experts to organizations who want to develop their employees and give them opportunities to develop more and just sort of be more. And there's so many different ways to look at it, but basically, like what I've been like, my solutions for us lately have been employee turnover and burnout reduction or burnout cessation. And so there's a relationship between professional development and psychological safety, and reduction in burnout and reduction in employee turnover. And so that's kind of what we work on.
So in your B&B, as you look at coaches, and I'm sure you vet them, do you explore with them their approaches to be sure that they're going to address issues around psychological safety?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, 100%. I mean, the main thing that I'm really looking for when I vet the coaches is that they have a real process. Then they're able to help people and they really care to help people, and that um, they care to help groups, right? Because our really main thing is group coaching, because that's what achieves the affordability.
Yeah. You had mentioned that the hospital setting is an area that's very important to you and you like to work in. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
What's so
so
special about that setting?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've been sort of looking at healthcare because for a number of reasons. One is the average employee turnover rate is 20%. So that means every year, 20% of the workforce leaves their employer. That's expensive. Um, that's also in healthcare, it's a very educated population, right? Almost everyone's gone to some sort of graduate school, but they have no management training. They've never received a personal assessment. They've maybe received a little bit of patient sort of side, what do you call it, bedside manner training type thing, but primarily it's very engineering based, and I call it like the engineering brain. Like it's very black and white, and there's a right and there's a wrong, and usually I'm right and you're wrong. And the thing is, when you deal with humans, there's always much more gray area. So I've just been focusing on hospitals as a population because I think there's there's so much we can do, but also they're in crisis, right? I mean, people are leaving hospitals, low pay, high work hours, bad work-life combination. I think hospitals are also not in the business of making money. So they have a different motivation, which is really interesting to me. It's not about dollars and cents. I mean, a lot of the metrics that they care about are like, medical error rate, patient satisfaction. They care about burnout rate. There are a lot of these different things that are really about humans, and making human life better. And when hospitals are really short-staffed, they hire things called traveling nurses. And traveling nurse is a nurse that works for 3 or 4 months as a full-time nurse, but only that period of time, and they're paid 1.5 or 2 times the full-time rate that the hospital would normally pay a nurse, because they are traveling to the hospital, right? They're plugging a hole. And that just ends up becoming extremely expensive because it's like a bad spiral. Because it seems like a good idea because you're plugging in a hole, you have a body there, but that person doesn't know anything about how the hospital works. They know how to be a nurse. That's kind of it. So then all the employees, our colleagues, right, are constantly training that person. And by the time they get up to speed, then they leave. So then you're creating a morale problem. More people are willing to leave, and they're probably pissed that person's making double their rate and they don't know anything. You know what I mean? It's just, there's so many issues. And then that brings me to this crazy case study where, if you're a large organization, it ends up being millions of dollars, this cost of employee turnover. And so this one story we had was like one hospital was in a small town in Colorado, and they had a 24% turnover rate, and the average is 20. And they were saying this is just unsustainable. You know, we can't keep hiring people. We can't pay them that much to move here. Again, that's costing a lot of money, and people leave. And so they decided to do group coaching that was opt-in through a system called Opposite Strengths. And the idea was really, it's basically, it's funny because it was developed independently of psychological safety, but it's very similar to that notion, which is that, you know, you understand what you're good at and you understand what someone else is good at, and you realize that even though it can be hard to communicate with that other person, when the two of you get together, you're able to have a really good solution because you've sort of almost have the 360 view of all the different problems with it. And so they brought this content, Opposite Strengths, in, and it was opt-in. And every year, the hospital's turnover rate went down 1% to 2% a year.
Yes, sir.
And which is great, right? And that's like wonderful. And then, but after 9 years, they were down to 4% on turnover, which is great. And that really means they're probably also not spending very much to recruit new people, because people are probably calling their friends and their colleagues saying like, hey, do you want a job here? We've got an opening. And on top of that, then they're winning awards, because turnover was related then to also like efficiency and people like, you know, jibing, whatever the word is, you know, like everything's working. And then the crazy part of the whole thing is that the difference between 24% turnover and 4% turnover was $32 million a year. It wasn't total. It's just every year. So if they can keep the turnover rate to 4%, that means they have an additional $24 million at the end of every year that they can decide what to do with. And then what that means is that you're no longer playing defense, you're playing offense. You can decide, do you want to build a new building? Do you want to give raises? Do you want to give bonuses? What do you want to do with that money? And that's a very different, and by the way, you're winning awards. So everyone wants to work there anyway, because you're obviously doing something great. And by the way, what that just tells you is that it's really systematic. It's systemic.
I've been really quite impressed to see how you came alive as you told that success case history. So in closing, one or two principles that you have learned from all of this that you'd like to leave with us.
Yeah, I'll tell you. The biggest one, and I think about this all the time, is I think if you can be really clear on what your North Star is, and then also like your organization's North Star, it makes everything so much easier. And then it's also really easy to pinpoint when things are like out of whack, because then it's not working towards the North Star. So meaning like, if you work, I say this sometimes, this analogy to people in hospitals, like if you are at a hospital, your North Star is patient experience, reducing errors, excellence. You are not in the business of ego stroking, right? You are not in the business of making powerful people feel great about their decisions. You are in the business of finding ways to make processes better and better and better so that you have fewer errors. And I think then right away you realize like, well, then it's silly to like let people with seniority run amok in an organization if that person is not singularly focused on reducing errors and increasing patient experience. I think the North Star just really helps you get rid of the fluff and not get distracted by all the different things kind of going on in the motion in the situation. And it helps bring other people into your thinking, because you're just saying, this is the one thing that we are working towards. And is this helping us get there? Yes or no? And then the decision becomes so easy.
Ms. Jain, thank you very much. We are all going to look towards our North Star. First, we'll identify our North Star. We look to it and we will reframe to be sure that we are always pointing towards our North Star. Thank you very much for the time that you've spent with us and the many things that you've shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.